Welcome back to the channel. For the last few videos, I've been talking about building my own PC and what my experience was of building a PC for editing and trying to improve the platform that I use to make it more pleasurable to do my post-production. But for this video, we're getting back to photography. And many photographers have found that putting some limitations on themselves as they go out for a shoot can often improve their photography. It challenges them and maybe causes them to be more observant, more careful with their framing, more diligent in seeking out the shots that they want to get. And that's why I decided to restrict myself in two ways for some photo outings. And one is to restrict myself to an area within 2 miles of my own home. It can be easy to go to somewhere amazing, and I often go into central London somewhere in order to photograph things that are visually attractive and well-known locations. But it's much more of a challenge if you restrict yourself to the area in which you live, because it's familiar to you and it causes you maybe to look at it with fresh eyes. And so I restricted myself to a radius of 2 miles of where I live. And the second thing that I did by way of restriction is that I restricted myself to using just one lens, and in particular I chose this 90mm macro lens on my Sony camera. And the reason I did that is it's probably even more of a challenge to photograph with a 90mm, particularly if you live in a rural area, because so often you want to capture those wide vistas, those landscape shots. But with a 90mm, that becomes much more of a challenge, and you have to concentrate more on framing your shots, and you also have to become more observant to look at the details perhaps that you want to shoot. So let's look through the photographs that I captured when I was out on my 2-mile radius photo walk around the location where I live, and I'll show you the kind of things that I shot, and maybe some of them would be interesting to you. I just want to say one thing before getting into it, and that is that I think it's really important that you shoot for your own pleasure rather than thinking of what might be successful when you post it online or what might sell if you sell your images. It's always good to photograph the things that you personally like yourself, because that brings pleasure to the whole art form for you. So let's look and see then what we managed to capture. Maybe some of these will provide inspiration for you. So for this first shot, it was in the playing fields that are next to our house, and I just really liked the geometric shapes of this particular piece of exercise equipment. Nothing more than that. I just liked the shapes and the form of it. And then if you live in a rural area, or even if there are nice gardens near to you, there'll always be some incredibly beautiful flowers that you can photograph. And the advantage of the 90mm 2.8 here is that you can completely separate them out from the background and produce a much simpler image than you otherwise would have done. There's always an opportunity for a selfie, so I just include this one for a bit of humor. And then because I took the macro lens, it was even possible to get a few macro shots. And here this fly was easily captured on the flowers as I walked past. And there he is again, exploring these flowers. In the area in which I live, there are a lot of public footpaths, and that's a real benefit. It makes it a much more pleasant rural photo walk than I might normally be used to in the city. And as I walked past this house, I noticed that there was a particularly interesting weather vane on the top. It was trickier to get this shot than you might think, because there was a breeze that day and it was spinning around a bit, and I had to wait until it moved into just the right angle and be stationary for a moment. As I say, there are a lot of footpaths along the way, and some of these create nice leading lines in your photographs. And I particularly like this photograph because it implies keeping on the straight and narrow path. And then as we walk a little bit further, I saw these little posts that looked like a line of soldiers all standing up, lined up together. And I like this photograph because of the impression of distance and the tractor marks, the tractor wheel marks along there create also a nice leading line through the center of the image. Again, going back to the fact that I was using a macro allows you to look into the detail and see this little dandelion that was at the side of the road as I walked along. And the macro shot really isolates it from the background and shows the detail of the seeds that are on it. Some things really make you think as you walk along, and I spotted this on the road, maple anode, and wondered what it was. Now, I think it has something to do with the fact that maple trees create a carbon that can be used for anodes. I don't know any more than that. Sometimes an anode is put into an area because it protects concrete against corrosion. I've Googled this and not really come up with a good explanation for what it is. So if anyone knows what this little grating might be, then please drop me a comment and help me out with my research. And then just to emphasize again the concept of leading lines as you walk past this little area of parkland, that leading line that twists through the image makes a photograph, whereas if I took a photograph like this without a leading line, it looks just a little bit boring. So I think, again, looking for something that ties your image together is really worthwhile. And in people's gardens, there are some beautiful objects. I particularly like this little sundial, and it looked like a real quality brass sundial set nicely on the concrete pillar with the metal base on the sundial part itself. Here's a situation where I like the framing of a frame within a frame. It just took my fancy as I walked past this garden. And I like this shot, even though it was a 90mm macro, because these horses were in the distance, it looks a little bit more like a traditional landscape shot with some horses just relaxing and grazing in the rural environment. Some things in windows are interesting, always being careful not to intrude on anyone's privacy, but I like these little rabbits being playful on the window. And then there are always situations that make you think. And in this particular situation, there is this image of a soldier, a silhouette of a soldier from the First World War, the 1914-18 World War. There's a lot of talk about war at the moment, given the situations in Ukraine, Africa, Gaza, and Iran. I think maybe sometimes we don't think enough about just how serious and how evil warfare is. In this First World War that this soldier represents, somewhere between 15 and 22 million people died in World War I, encompassing both military personnel and civilians. It's hard to think about that because everyone is a human life, just like our own lives. So when we think about war, I think we should think about every possible way that there is to avoid conflict, because war is indeed an incredible evil. Moving on from something that is maybe a little bit depressing, I really like these wheat fields as I walked past, and because I had the 90mm macro lens, I wasn't in a position to photograph the full breadth of the field, so I focused in on the individual ears of corn, and perhaps focusing in even more, getting down to almost single ears of corn. I really liked this image. I wonder if any of these inspired you. I certainly enjoyed it. I find that a walk like this with the camera is almost therapeutic. It's slow, it allows you to be more observant than you normally are when you're out and about. It enables you to take things slowly and get your eye in and maybe improve your photography a little bit. So let me know if you've ever done this. Let me know what you think. Are there other challenges that you think that might be interesting in order to improve your photography? I certainly plan to do another one within 2 miles of home, but with a completely different camera. I will take along my RX1R Mark II, which has a 35mm lens, and see just how different the images are that I capture with that camera. So thanks for watching. I look forward to your comments, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.